I call the honourable member for Fisher.
Thanks, Mr Deputy Speaker. In my 6 years in this place, I've had the privilege of holding the responsibility of being chair of the Defence Subcommittee of the Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade, and now that the government has changed hands, I find myself in the position of deputy chair, and it's a role that I relish. It's probably one that I enjoy, one of the most of the committees, the many numerous committees that I've served on in this place. I've never served in uniform, Mr Deputy Speaker. I remember as a young lad, to the school students who are in the chamber at the moment, I remember as a young lad fronting up to the St Kilda Road recruitment centre for the ADF, and I wanted to be a fighter pilot like many other young people. And yes, a Top Gun. We'd shifted from F-111s to F-18 Classic Hornets, and I wanted a piece of the action. And so I went down to the St Kilda Road Recruiting Centre, and they said, yep, come back when you've got high distinctions in Maths 1, Maths 2, English, Physics, and you can have a choice of your subject. And guess what? I never went back. Whilst I have never served in uniform, particularly in my roles as chair of the Defence Subcommittee and now deputy chair, I have an enduring respect for those that have. I have had the privilege of working alongside many of our men and women in uniform in that role, and also I've tried to do at least one or two ADF parliamentary program trips throughout my 6 years in this place, and I can honestly say that the men and women of our ADF are absolutely remarkable human beings. And if any of the young men and women and students in this chamber want to take up a life of service in this country, they could do no better than to serve in the ADF for a period of time. It's often said that men and women who go into politics are volunteers and their families are the conscripts. Well, exactly the same could be said for men and women who, of course, join the ADF. Our men and women in the ADF put themselves at risk. They know that at any point in time they could be called upon to make the ultimate sacrifice. But their families don't make those commitments, at least by first hand. But we know, out of all of the inquiries that have been done over the many years, that our men and women in the ADF sometimes, not all, sometimes are impacted upon by their service, sometimes physically, sometimes mentally. And of course that has an impact upon their families. And perhaps what I have learnt in my time in these various roles is that when men and women join the ADF, they join with great ideals of doing great things, enjoying great comradeship. One moment they're flying, driving or sailing multi-million dollar, or in some cases multi-billion dollar equipment. Their camaraderie is sky high. They have a sense of mission. They have a sense of purpose. But when they leave the ADF, and particularly for those who leave the ADF involuntarily, either because of ill health or disciplinary reasons, those involuntary departures can have very, very significant impacts upon our ex-serving ADF members. And of course, many of those ADF members, those veterans, will return to families. and those impacts that family members watch and see their loved one go through feelings of helplessness and loss, that loss of mission, that loss of purpose. And of course, like any family, they share that pain, and it has impacts on those families. Mr Deputy Speaker, the care of our veterans and their families is an issue that should be absolutely beyond politics. I don't care whether you're Labor, Liberal, National, Teal, Independent. Those men and women that serve this country with great distinction deserve the honour to be not only respected and looked after when they are in uniform, but also when they leave. Back in 2017, I think it was, I had the privilege of travelling overseas to look at world's best practice for the care of our veterans who are suffering from PTSD. I had the privilege of travelling to England, Sweden, the Netherlands and Canada to look at what those countries do to look after our veterans. And what I saw in those 4 countries, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the provisions that we have in this country were far better than in those other countries. Now, that's not to suggest that the $11.5 odd billion that we spend each year in the care of our veterans through the Department of Veterans Affairs is perfect. It is not. The care of our veterans cannot just be gauged by a dollar sign. And there have been many stories about how, and the current Royal Commission is working through those, about where people haven't received the care that they need. And I'm not suggesting for a second that it is a perfect system. It is not. But I don't want Australians to have a misperception that their government of any persuasion or their governments do not hold veterans in the highest esteem and do everything they can to look after them. Can we do better? Yes, we can. Must we do better? Yes, we must. This bill will provide greater care and protections to our family members of our veterans, the conscripts, the people who didn't sign up as their family members did. I want to acknowledge all members in this place who have served as the Veterans Affairs Minister, certainly in the 45th, 46th Parliament, and the previous former Deputy Prime Minister was one of them who's in the chamber today. Every single one of those men who have held that position, because I think they have all been men since I've been in this place, have absolutely undertaken their responsibilities with great diligence and care and, dare I say, love. I do want to acknowledge the current Veterans Affairs Minister. I want to acknowledge him for taking my call recently about a veteran who I was very concerned about, who is a constituent of mine. And as sometimes happens, we were getting a bit of a run around from DVA, and I rang him and I said, "Mate, we've got a problem and I'm quite concerned about this constituent." And to his credit, he fixed it in under 24 hours. So credit to you. This is beyond politics. The care of our veterans should never descend into a political game of argy-bargy. I hope that does not happen. I'm not going to stand up here and say, you know, we've done this, you guys have done that. That's not a place in this debate when men and women who have served our country with distinction, I can tell you now from all my dealings with them, they are not interested in that sort of conduct. They just want to know that if they're going to pull on the uniform, if they're going to put themselves in harm's way, they want to make sure that they are going to be looked after, and importantly, probably even more importantly in their eyes, their families are going to be looked after. That's what this bill will do. This bill does put into place, and in effect mirrors a bill that the previous government put in to the parliament prior to the election. But I'm very, very pleased that the current government has picked it up and run with it. And I thank the House.